Hi, this is Peggy at Headshots by Peggy, and today we have the amazing casting director, Gary Zuckerbrod, with us, and we are going to have so much fun. Gary, thanks so much for taking the time to hang out with us
Sure.
today. You've had a busy day.
Yeah, busy with sort of like helping people try to get some projects off the ground. I read a script that I kind of fell in love with. I have a consultancy business with a great person, and he really loves taking filmmakers and actually, just trying to have them realize their dreams. And so he sends me a lot of the scripts, and I give him my opinions on it. And this one, it's basically there are a couple of other characters, but basically it's three people in a car, and it's it's really well written.
That's fun. That's really
Yeah.
cool. So how long have you been, doing that, working with that end
Oh,
of it?
I've been working with this person for about 5 years now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what's sort of great about it is there's no studios involved. It's really, trying to accomplish the filmmaker's dreams, the filmmaker, what the vision is. And a number of the scripts, they're not what my cup of tea necessarily, but I like some of the filmmakers. And a couple of them, like there's one that takes place in Detroit, based on a novel by a Detroit novelist. And it's about four people who meet at the very beginning of the movie and then meet again at the end of the movie. And they kind of tell the stories individually, but all four of the roles are African-American, and one of them is a young lady, and the other are three tour de force, like almost Shakespearean in nature. And I'm just hoping that someday we get that movie made, because I just want to hear those words being spoken by an actor. I mean, especially the actors that I think would actually do it. I think it would be just so exciting.
So that kind of is a good segue for me to ask you, how did you get started casting? Because I think that, like, when you watch a movie or a television show, the cast makes or breaks it. And I think that, like, I don't have that gift personally. So it's something that I like, wow, that's so cool. Like, who cast this? Because it's amazing. And it wouldn't have been this story without these specific people. So how did you realize you had that gift, and how did you kind of get started in it?
That's a very good question. First of all, there's a lot of parts to that question that I'm going to go over. So I was very lucky. I was brought up in a suburb of Manhattan. My parents were, as I always call them, doers. They were the people who we just did. And my dad was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. My mom was brought up in the Bronx, so she was a Yankees fan. The Dodgers moved to San Francisco, and the Mets started playing at Shea Stadium. So, we would go to Mets games. We'd go to tons of museum exhibits, which I love, because my safe place, my happy place is museums. I went to college to become an archaeologist, specifically an Egyptologist. And I ended up being an art major. So put me in a museum anywhere in the world, and I'm the happiest person on earth.
Wow, that's cool.
And, I got exposed to theater. I saw my first Broadway play when I was 8 years old. I saw the original company of 1776. And from that point on, my older brother, who also loves theater, we would take the Long Island Railroad into the city and get twofers. We get 2 seats in the balcony for $4. And we saw everything. And I mean everything. And I just fell in love with theater and movies. ABC had something called the 4:30 movie, where they would take these great movies and chop them down to either an hour and a half, or if it was like a big one like The Agony and the Ecstasy or something like that, they would divide it into 5 days with commercials. And my parents took us to, in those days also, movies opened in a big city and then they spread out. It wasn't until Jaws that was the first wide release movie. And so my parents, we would go into Radio City or the RKO, and we would see movies in Manhattan. You know, we traveled. And so, so after college, I got a job working for Bonnie Timmerman, who was a casting director in New York, who was an amazing teacher. And, you know, I asked her one day, how do you know what a good actor is? And she said, one day you will know. And a very good friend of mine who was an assistant agent took me to a show, 2-person show with June Stein down at the Circle in the Square in Greenwich Village. And it was 2 people, it was June Stein and a young actor who nobody had really ever heard of. And the next day I went in to Bonnie and I said, I know what a good actor is. And I had just watched one of the most amazing tour de force performance by John Turturro.
Oh, wow.
And he got accolades off of this show and started his career.
That's amazing. So, I mean,
stuff.
see, this is kind of a gift you had because you were exposed to things and you thought and you watched and you kind of saw, right?
Yeah, I was really lucky. I mean, I'm really lucky. We were just exposed. I mean, and you know what? So were my friends. I mean, because we were so close to Manhattan.
Yeah.
You know, when I first moved out here, I used to kid my friends. I used to say, "So where'd you go on school trips?" And they'd be like, "Oh, we went to MGM. Where'd you go?" Went to the UN. I went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Brooklyn Museum of Art. You know, the Statue of Liberty.
Wow. Wow. That's a great childhood. I mean, that's by the time you were 18, you could like check out half of the things that are on my bucket list probably before you're 18. That's really cool. So what makes your casting office different or unique from maybe other casting offices here?
I don't know if there's something that makes it unique. I think actually it's more that we have a lot of similarities. You know, fortunately, because of my work as president of the CSA and forming the union for casting directors and being the shop steward for television casting directors, I know my colleagues pretty well. And I can tell you that I think we share a lot of things that are very similar. I think passion is something we share. We really love the art of acting, and we love theater and cinema and watching people do their absolute best. I think we, you know, I don't know how many auditions I've sat through. I can't even, I think I've told this story on another thing that I've been on, but I was once on a panel at the Screen Actors Guild, and it was me and 3 other casting directors, and they introduced the three other casting directors, and then the moderator said, and now the oldest casting director on the panel. And I was like, I am the oldest casting director on this panel. And the first question was, so how has casting changed since you started in casting? And I said, well, actors now come in and read in English instead of Greek. So, but I think we truly love watching the process of when it just works. When an actor and a role, there's a synthesis when they come together, and no matter how many times I've seen it happen, it's just magic.
So as a headshot photographer, my job is to get your attention, you know, for my client. And so that's why I talk to so many casting directors, and I'm like, what is the magic formula? And what I realized is casting directors are human, and
Oh,
everyone has
wow.
their, I know, right? It was this big revelation, and everybody has their own unique, things that they like. I remember I said, and this one lady was like, I hate red lipstick. If I see a headshot with red lipstick, I won't even consider that actor, and then, just some random weird thing. And then you realize that it's mostly, it has nothing to do with the magic formula. It's, are you a fit for the role?
Yeah.
Because you have a job. And the thing that I've realized is a lot of actors don't realize how the casting process works. A lot of actors think that casting directors are God, and it's on the casting director whether they get booked or not. But the way it works is you have a client. Your job is to bring actors to your client, the producers, the directors,
Yeah.
and so how do you get your job? Like, is it word of mouth? Is it, or do you pitch yourself? How do you get these big
Um,
projects to pick you?
so uh, a lot of times it's a relationship with either a producer or director that you've worked with before. Um, or, there's casting offices at studios and networks, and we have relationships with those people, and, they'll bring us in, and, if you're a match with that producer and director, then you get that job. It's not magical, and it's not brain surgery. It's very cut and dry. It's a very job interview kind of world. You go in there and you pitch yourself, and you pitch your ideas, and you talk about roles. I like to talk about roles philosophically as much as I can. And some people, and you have to, there's another part of job interviewing. It's really interesting because being a professional job interviewer, I was very lucky. I got my first job as a full casting director because my boss quit and left the job, and they kind of didn't like what he was doing anyway, and they just made me the casting director. And it was a very unusual job because it was a new version of the Twilight Zone that was done in the early 1980s. And so there weren't series regulars. It was like 2 or 3 segments per hour. And basically I just had to cast the story. I also had a big budget. And I'd just come out from New York, and I had a $10,000 travel allowance that I could spend arbitrarily with the approval of my,
Right.
So, I needed an African-American actor for something, and I flew out Morgan Freeman, and, and I knew Bruce Willis from New York, and I bumped into him on the street in Hollywood, and I said, Bruce, what are you doing out here? And he said, I don't know, Gary, I just shot this pilot with Sybil Shepherd. Who's going to watch that? And I said, hey, I've got this Twilight Zone episode, and Wes Craven's directing it, and he's a really cool guy. And he said, oh, I'd love to work with Wes Craven. And he came in, shook hands with Wes, and Wes said, that's the guy. It wasn't, it was like, it was the magic dream job. Who didn't want to be in a Twilight Zone episode?
Right. Because we've all grown up with that. Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe it. Danny Kaye did a Twilight Zone episode. So it really was unlike anything else I think I've ever worked on. And so I got lucky, and, I got good people on that, and some people noticed and said, let's give this kid a chance. And so that's how we get our jobs.
That's cool. So it's like any other job. It's a combination of word of mouth, a combination of knowing people, a combination of being in the right spot at the right time.
100%.
So I know this will get you in trouble, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What is your favorite project that your all-time, like, you'll always go back to it? Either it was just a really cool project, or it just happened to be a really fun thing to cast, or like, what's your big memory that, like, you kind of like smile every time you think about it?
Well, the Twilight Zone was fantastic. I'll tell you, that's a tough one because, each project has a thing of its own. I will say, I think one of my favorite projects was a series that I did called Without a Trace. And so basically it was about a group of FBI agents. Rana Cross actually cast the pilot. And but each episode was a crime of somebody missing, and the FBI team had to find them. And it was, I had a lot of leeway on how I could cast it. And I was working with producers that were great. They really trusted me. And so, like I'd say, hey, this guy came, and they'd come into audition. Back then it was, we didn't start taping. I think, what were we on, 5, 6 seasons? We didn't start taping episodes until the last season, or maybe the second to last season. So actors would come in and I'd say, that actor who just left the room, that's who we have to cast. And they would generally say, yeah. I mean, it kept occasionally, we were, but I think like the 3rd or 4th episode, there was a story about a man whose child goes missing. And they said, we'll probably, if we like the actor that's cast in this role, we have a storyline for him. And I said, when I read it, I said, do you know who the actor Charles Dutton is? And they said, yeah. I said, that's who came to mind. And they said, if you can get us Charles Dutton, go ahead. And he won an Emmy.
Wow.
Yeah. I think he won the Emmy. So it was kind of that. So it was just working with lovely people and just being, John Krasinski John Bernthal did an episode, and it just was like that.
That's a really cool
Viola
story.
Davis did it. I mean, it was that kind of thing. It was great. They were great roles. Great roles are what make casting great.
I know for me, when I see somebody that I did their headshots and then I see them on TV, like I have this great sense of pride, like I was one of the stepping stones to get them there. But as a casting director, I feel like you've got to be like, you see somebody win an Emmy that you cast and you're like, oh, that was right. I put the right person in the right spot, the right story, the right storyteller for the right story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like people say, well, who have you discovered? And I don't, it's not like I discover people. It's fate where, somehow the right person comes along at the right time.
Yeah.
And you just, it works.
That's got to be just a cool feeling though. Like kind of a self-pride, like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's, we also make mistakes. There are times I fight for somebody tooth and nail and they're not good in that role. They just don't work. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, yeah, it is a really nice feeling.
So do a lot of shows have like a specific look they're going for, and how does that play a role in your casting? Is that pretty much written in the breakdown, what you're looking for, or how do you kind of get that across?
That is a phenomenal question for a number of reasons, but yes and no, because like most things in life, everybody wants, it's always easier when you have a set of rules and you just have to go by those rules. We don't work in that business. We work in the intangible business. So, and if you ask a lot of casting directors, sometimes it's just that gut feeling that you get. But yeah, so when I was doing Without a Trace, the executive producer was also from New York. He had grown up, both executive producers had grown up in Manhattan, and they wanted a New York look. So this was kind of funny, but for the first season, one of the executive producers said, I don't want any blondes on the show. I was like, well, my mom's blonde. She's in New York and she's from New York. And he was like, I don't care. I don't want any blondes. So I had to be careful not to bring in blonde. I mean, seriously, he was like, she's blonde. Until finally somebody said, they do have blondes in New York. It's what they're like that makes them New Yorkers. Right. So, you get restrictions like that. Or I did this show, actually the same executive producer. I did this show called The Last Ship. And it was tough because there's a specific way that that people aboard a Navy destroyer speak when they get to the bridge, because it's a chain of command. So the captain will say, or the highest officer on deck will give that command, and it comes down verbally, a chain, so that there's no mistake made. And there's a way that is spoken. And it's spoken actually like almost like an acting exercise. It's spoken using your that thing that right here in the stomach, but it's spoken with a deep sort of powerful way of speaking, so that there's no mistake. Uh-huh. And we actually had to put out, like, for these roles, and we had to cast tons of them. If you don't have experience speaking Navy speak, either watch these episodes or watch a movie that takes place aboard a Navy vessel. And it was like, we'd have to go through 30 people to cast, to come up with 2 or 3 people. For those roles, even though the series was taking place all over the world and we had to find like Vietnamese ambassadors in the 60s who spoke only in Vietnamese, that was easier than casting people to speak on the bridge of the ship. And during the last season, I was on the set and I was introduced to these 2 guys, and I asked, and they were from the Navy, and I said, so what do you guys do? And they said, we're the Navy consultants. And I said, oh, I'm the casting director. And he said, how do you find all those people to speak Navy speak? And I said, well, we teach them how to do it. And if they don't come in doing it, we work with them. And he said, wow, it takes us about 2 months or 3 months to teach us our recruits. So I said, I gave him my card and I said, I may need a job soon.
There you go. There you go. I'll teach you. So how many times would you say that, like, if somebody, you get them there, they're in the audition, how many redirects will you give an actor before you're like, all right, have a nice day? Like, you're obviously not going to get it.
That's a very good question. And I'm going to give you actually a sort of longer answer than, so when you walk in when you walk into an audition room and you've prepared whatever you have prepared, your best friend will be a word called flexible. Because there's a 50-50 chance that the camera won't be, or even more, there's a greater percentage chance, the camera won't be where you thought it would be. Everything that you geared towards that camera won't be there. So if you do it in the way you were going to really do it, that's what the tape would pick up. So you got to adjust. And you might get somebody like me reading opposite you who's not a particularly good reader. And so you have to adjust to that. Or the environment isn't anything like what you think it will be, So flexibility will always be your greatest asset. Always, 100% always. And it's not just in casting, So when I took this course, they gave us these 2 words, flexibility and rigidity. And if you're rigid, if you can't open your mind up to changing the situation that you need to change, you will lose. it's like I once went to an interview for a casting job, and it was about a Southern family, and it was pretty clear that the big name was going to be in the matriarch of this Southern family. And the worst thing was it was a lunch interview, which is terrible because you're like stuck there. If you've gotten it wrong, you're like, I'm stuck here. You got to make an excuse to get out of there. So they said, let's talk. We small chatted for a little bit, and they said, let's talk about the roles. And I said, well, I loved the role of the grandmother, and I've got a ton of ideas. And they said, oh, great. Did anybody tell you we changed that from Caucasian to African American? I said, no. Oh, that's great. Well, then what about so and so and so and so and so and so? And they went, wow, that's great. I didn't have a single African American name written down on that list. But I wasn't going to panic in that moment. I just thought of all the African American actresses I love in that age range.
You have to be able to.
Unfortunately, they were going to hire me, but it was too expensive to shoot, so they canceled the pilot. But it's the same thing when you walk in. If if somebody says to you, oh, well, I know in the script that you have, your son is sick and he's, not going to make it, and the doctor tells you he's not going to make it, but they changed it. He's actually going to live. You got to be able to adjust, because that's the expectation that people who hire actors have of actors. When a director gives you a direction on the set, the expectation is you can process that and achieve it. And if you know what you're doing as an actor, you can. You just have to believe you can. So it's the same thing when you walk in my office and I give you a direction that sounds 180 degrees against what you've done. If you process and believe that you can, you really can.
So is that ever a test? I mean, is it ever like, I really like this person, I want to know what they're going to do if I throw a curveball at them?
That's not my job unless I'm directed to do that. My job isn't to try to put somebody on the spot or make them feel more anxious in an audition. I want them to feel their best so that they're doing their best. I mean, look, breakdowns these days are insane. I mean, they're insane. We can get 6,000 people submitted for a role. I mean, how do I choose 15 out of 6,000 people? I look at their resumes, I look what they've done. If they look right, great. I don't want those 15 or 16 people that I bring in for that role to fail. I want them all to succeed.
Right, because I mean, they're basically what I tell people, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I say is that you have a job, and basically it's you want an answer to your problem, and that's a good actor that can fit that role. Right. I mean, your job is not to say no, get out of here. Your job is to hopefully, yes, you're a fit. This is great. This is amazing. Let's go. Right. And you want to finish the day and get the best actor for the role, just like everybody else does. Yeah, and I want in the ideal situation, nobody walks out of my office feeling bad. I mean, there are times when I do say to somebody, you know what, you weren't prepared enough. And I don't try to say it meanly or yell at them. I just say, look, your resume is good. You're interesting. I can see that you didn't spend the time preparing for this. When I don't have the time to have you go back and do it again, but just, you're better than what you gave yourself to do. When I have actors in and say they hate auditions, or if we're in conversation, I hate going the audition process. I'm not an actor. So, I'm talking from like coaching the basketball game from your television set. But it always blows my mind, because it's like Stephen Tobolowsky said this. He's like, the one time you're guaranteed to play this role is in the audition room. So I'm like, man, I think that the audition is where you like really get ready and you get excited because you get to do what you love to do. You get to act. It's guaranteed that at least one person's going to watch you perform this role today. And, you know, sometimes that's you. You're the one person that's going to watch them. And actors should have that attitude, I think. Come in more prepared versus, you know, less prepared.
Right. And isn't it amazing? An actor like Stephen Tobolowsky, who's just one of the joys to be around, and talent beyond, I mean, you know, that is a true gift. You know, I never think of Stephen Tobolowsky getting nervous in an audition, and I guess he does, or because he's always such a pro when he comes in.
He was on my vlog. Gosh, it's been a year and a half ago or so now. But he was talking about one of the times because he had just was injured and he showed up for an audition on the wrong day. You know, just like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, and you know, you don't think about it, but actors need to realize that everybody's just human and stuff happens, and not to take everything so serious, and just like be their best. Don't compare yourself to someone else. Just go in and do your job, because you're not looking, when you're casting something, you're not looking for someone else. You're looking for this person, this specific
right. I mean, person. Yeah, it's that same, you know, again, my casting girls, we always talk about this. We don't bring people in because we want them to do poorly. We bring people in because we believe they're going to be great.
Right. If they get an audition, you already think that they're perfect for the role.
That there's something there that's right. I mean, that, you know, there's a reason we're taking the chance. And honestly, it's you know, it's a crapshoot. I mean, I can set up a session of a lot of people and say, gee, you know, I didn't find anybody who could do those two lines the way I would feel comfortable sending them up to my producer. So I look for another bunch of people to bring in. I might change my criteria a little bit on what I'm, you know, looking on the resume for. Yeah, for me, again, because, you know, I believe in studying. The arts are all of them. You know, as I said, I was an art major. So I had to, you know, my hand-to-eye coordination, it doesn't just develop overnight. It develops over years and years of doing it. And, you know, I tried to pick up a pencil and pad about a year ago, and I realized I have no more hand-eye coordination to do it. I'd have to go back and try to practice that skill. This is the reason that actors go out and read with other actors, you know, all the time, or should be reading with other actors all the time, is because that skill doesn't stay fresh. It has to be constantly replenished, you know. And I think, and I use this metaphor already, you can't be the second clarinetist of a symphony and not practice every day.
Yeah.
It's not quite the same in acting, but, you know, you can't do it.
Yeah.
You have to be primed.
Get in front of your camera. Everybody has a cell phone. Get in front of there. Just do stuff. You know, practice that, flex that muscle. So speaking of cell phones, now talk to me about self-tape auditions. Is pretty much everything self-tape right now? At what level are you calling people in? What's going on right now? Let's talk about.
We're waiting for a project to start, so we haven't gotten back into the game. But I was pretty involved with, you know, like what casting directors will be doing. So if you're going to self-tape an audition, and it's kind of the same thing going for a Zoom audition also, you know, the same basic rules apply. You want to present yourself in the best way you can possibly present yourself. So how are you going to do that? You have to make a little investment in yourself. You've got to have a background that looks good. And truthfully, they're not expensive. You can get one for about $15 on Amazon. And you got to have some good lighting. And yeah, that's going to cost you a little bit of money. I mean, you can get an inexpensive, you know, lighting set, or you can get one of those circle lights, which work really, really well, especially because you can dim them a little bit. you've got to use the space as if you were in that audition room, use it to your advantage. And if you are self-taping, somehow you have to make sure that whoever is reading opposite you, even if it's you on one of those apps that you're speaking to, that it's good, that person is good, because it's so distracting when it's not. And it's harder for me to, like, I don't judge it that much, but believe me, producers, studio executives, network, they do, because it kind of says I didn't care enough.
Yeah.
It does in some like weird warped way. What, they didn't care enough to read my script and make it look better?
Right. And lighting and sound. Sound is really important when you're self-taping, because you can get a mic for $15 off Amazon, but you've got to do something to make sure, because if you can't hear them, it's just, then you're working and you get frustrated, is my assumption, because that's what I do when I'm watching video that I can't hear. It's like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah. And the hard thing is the person reading opposite you, because you can't just invite anybody in to read opposite you, and it's not safe. So, even if you've recorded yourself and you're reading opposite yourself, it's actually very hard to hear that. It actually doesn't sound the same because your distance from the microphone is different. I mean, there's enough variation that it works really well.
Yeah.
But you as an actor have to care to put the care into that so that you're presenting yourself in the best possible way.
My advice has been, for the last several months, I've been saying, get all the technical bugs worked out now. Get your backdrop, figure out how you're going to tape yourself at home, figure out who's going to read for you, so that when you do get that audition, it's smooth. And that's basically what you're saying, is show them that you care enough to put some effort into it, just a little bit of effort.
Yeah.
So one more question I really wanted to make sure I ask you, and that is, when you're looking through submissions, you see a headshot, hey, this headshot, this is interesting. You click on it, you open it up, you look at the resume, you look at the reel. What is your? I know a lot of people right now are like going out to these things where you can like pay for a scene to be made. It's not an actual job that they had. It's like I don't even know what they call it, but you know what I'm talking about?
Demo.
Yeah, a demo reel. You go pay for a demo reel. So would you rather see a demo reel that's made for that actor specifically, or would you rather see a quick clip of them in, a network show? Does it matter to you?
No. Whatever shows you in the best light, but look, if you have something that's a clip of you in a network show, the one thing that you should avoid, and again, it's something that casting directors like, oh, the first reel on their demo reel was a night scene and we can't even see their face. And that happens so much because sometimes they're just more dramatic scenes. But we want to be able to see your face, not the person who's in the scene with you as much. And it has to be work that you consider good work. Because if you're thinking that's not good work, I'll probably look at it and have the same feeling.
Right. So obviously basic common sense.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure
you don't,
look good.
because this happens all the time. Like I'll put out a role for a nurse or a paramedic or something like that. And we get 6,000 people submitted, and it's a lot. And then I go to watch somebody's demo reel and it's almost all dark. And I can barely see their face. And I get it. It was nice, artistic shot, but I can't see you.
Right.
And that's what I want to do. That's all I want to do is I just want to see you. Right. You sound good, but I can't see what you're doing.
I know I've kept you here for a long time, so I know you have a busy day, but do you have anything that you just want to share? What do you want actors to know that you think maybe it's like something that you just wish actors would do or would stop doing, or advice you want to give, or is there anything you want to say?
Um, I would say it's a couple of things. It's a really rough time. You're all getting used to a new way of auditioning, and it's going to be some form of Zoom, some form of self-taping. Forget it. That's what it's going to be. Don't think about it anymore. Move on. Figure out a way to do it the best you possibly can to present you in the best way you possibly can be presented. And just know that that's it. And you just have to trust that if you're doing the best you possibly can, the person on the other side will respond. And that's all you can do. You can't, once it's out there, it's out there. It's like acting, it's like doing a show. Once you've said those words and they've gone out of your mouth, that's it. They've gone out of your mouth. Once a scene is shown in a movie theater or on TV, it's done. And you just move forward. You have to move forward from it. But you always prepare to do your absolute best.
Well, I really appreciate your time. Are you on social media? Do you have people following you? Do you want, what are you like, leave me alone? Or do you have like a Instagram or anything you like followers?
I'm not a good, so I have accounts. I barely check them. I'm not good at that. I tweet every once in a blue moon, but sometimes I'll read tweets. I do have an email address, zuckcastconnects@gmail.com.
Perfect. So yeah, how do you like people to reach out to you, or do you just?
Yeah, it's really, I think it's really, especially after I teach a class or something, if somebody has a question about, a direction I gave them or something that I said in the class, it's sort of, I love that because I want to know what somebody's thinking. If what I'm saying isn't working for people, I don't want to continue to give them information that isn't working.
So how can people find your classes?
I usually teach at Ace Studios.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate, this was fun for me. I really learned a lot. So
oh God, thanks.
As a headshot photographer, I love talking to casting directors. Do you have any headshot tips while we got you here? We'll just throw in a bonus here. What do you like to see?
A good representation of the actor.
Do you like the actor to look like their headshot when they show up into your audition?
I prefer it, yeah.
Yeah, I always, it's, you think that's silly, but I have actors.
No, I don't, considering how many.
Yeah.
And then
I see them and I'm like, I took your headshots. I don't even know who you are. Who did all this? Yeah.
I mean, I've been in casting since 1984. Can you imagine the amount of headshots that I've gone through?
No, I can't.
Considering that,
you started when headshots looked like this.
No, but I started when headshots came in, when submissions came in envelopes of headshots.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's, God, we used to sit there and file the head, you get to wait. It was like waiting for the guy to deliver the headshot.
So let's say in 1984, what was the average amount of head submissions that you got per role? Like just a ballpark. What was an average?
I don't know. It was, I'll only say that it was less because we were in New York. Okay. So there were less actors. I mean, probably at that time there were less actors in New York than Los Angeles. Los Angeles is the biggest actor market probably in the world. Yeah. But what it was you got a stack of them from the breakdown guy, and it all came at once. And you had you had all these folders of, yes, no, maybe, and each role.
Wow.
And then you had to decide when you were finished with the project, what am I doing with these headshots? Am I keeping them? you know, and for years and years and years, I did. I kept headshots and notebooks and folders and files.
Crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well,
funny
this was
every once in a while I'll find out I've gotten rid of most of my old casting books. I either digitized them or just got rid of them. And I donated one to the Motion Picture Academy recently of a movie that I did. And I was going through it before I photocopied it before I gave it to them. I was like, oh my God, I don't remember this. I read Ellen DeGeneres.
Oh, wow. Funny.
I was like, I read Ellen DeGeneres. And the note next to it was, she's pretty funny.
That's funny.
I didn't realize it was a meme, but
That's that right there is your next Instagram post. The picture of that with your handwritten note by it in the year. That's hilarious.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's wonderful that, you know, the Motion Picture Academy keeps those things.
That's really cool. That's cool to know. Well, thank you again. This has been really fun. I know everybody is going to love this and get tons of information from it, and very, very helpful. So I really appreciate it. And to you guys, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I appreciate all of you. Make sure that you share this with everyone you know. Leave us tons of comments. And most importantly, have an amazing week. I'll see you next week.